You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the latest episode of Star Trek Lower Decks called Upper Decks. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Jason Tyler. Hey, Father.
Hello.
And Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, we do have some listener feedback, so stick around for that at the end of the episode. Be sure to get your very own Secrets of Star Trek t-shirt or other kinds of merchandise we have available by visiting sqpn.com/merch. And another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy, which you should check out right away because very important thing coming up. The Secrets of Middle-earth, they'll be covering the new Tolkien Middle-earth movie, The War of the Rohirrim, which is coming up very soon. So definitely get in on that. The Secrets of Middle-earth, wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/Middle-earth. So, Jimmy, why don't you give us a recap of what happens in Upper Deck?
This week, the Lower Deckers metatextually note that they seem to be the stars of the show around here, and the bridge crew just seems to fade into the background. So we then transition into a story that is all about the Upper Deckers, and each one of them faces their own crisis. Captain Freeman has to cope with a busy schedule filled with minutia. Dr. T'Ana has to learn to feel pain so that she can appropriately treat people who have it. Shax is having visions left over from the Cardassian occupation and is fighting his inner demons using astral projection. Billups must deal with a series of cascading catastrophic failures in engineering based on improvised repairs he's done in the past. And Ransom must get some squabbling lower deckers from Beta and Delta shifts to cooperate in herding a bunch of big space cow roly-polies that can turn invisible. The situation is complicated when it turns out that a scientist sent to study the space cow roly-polies is actually a disguised member of an insectoid race known as the Clicket, who hate being complimented. He's actually the vanguard of a Clicket invasion of the ship. They want to steal the space cow's cloak and organs, and then maybe eat what's left depending on texture and flavor. And while the Upper Deckers are dealing with their own emergencies, they must now deal with the Clicket invasion of the ship. In the end, Captain Freeman compliments the Clicket captain into fleeing the ship since they've evolved a fight-or-flight response to being praised, and the day is saved, with our Lower Deckers not being aware that anything notable went on today. The end.
So, Father, what'd you think of this one?
There's a lot I liked. You know, this was in the really inverse of the TNG episode called Lower Decks, which was the inspiration for this whole series. And so it's good to see, that. In the execution, I thought, it seemed to drag a little bit to me in the early on when we were seeing the different parts of the day for the Upper Deckers until finally, the Clicket invasion is revealed, and then things really seem to pick up. And so overall, not a bad episode, but still enjoyable in many ways. So,
how about you, Jimmy?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's nice to see the Upper Deckers have their moment in the sun, given that this is the inverse of the usual formula. And it was nice having each of the major Upper Deckers face an individualized challenge. Some of the challenges were really interesting, like Shax. I would love to know more about what's going on with him and his astral projection and his inner demons and stuff like that, and what happened with the Cardassians. Unfortunately, we don't get too much development of that. We just see them kicking their butts on the astral plane. I also thought Dr. T'Ana's was interesting. They introduced a new element for her. I mean, she's been portrayed as somewhat unsympathetic to her patients, and now they tell us why. It's because she has extraordinarily high pain tolerance. And so she doesn't experience pain the way her patients do. And it really has to be something dramatic for her to feel it. She has a pain scale that has a happy face. It only has two readings on it. It's got a happy face and a neutral face.
Yeah.
And they use pain, for people who may not be familiar, they use pain scales to typically with like 10 different faces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they'll show them to a patient, especially a child, and say, point to the one which you feel like, to get some kind of a sense of how much pain a person is in. But the pain scales we have are very simplistic, and there's not that much. There's not really that much of a range of pain expressions. So Ali Brosh, the cartoonist who creates the ultra simple Microsoft Paint memes like clean all the things, that's an Ali Brosh. She had a very painful experience after she and her boyfriend had eaten too many craisins, which are cranberry raisins.
Yeah.
And then ended up vomiting. And it's like, is this Ebola? It's like, no, it ended up just being too many craisins, but they were in so much pain that they showed him the pain scale. And it's like, this doesn't even begin to describe where we're at. And so she designed an entirely new pain scale with people clawing their eyes out on the upper end and their face melting and stuff like that. And it's like, this is much more expressive. Yeah. I have had anomalous anatomy, it turns out, in one of my back molars, where they had done a root canal, and normally humans have 3 roots. But I guess because of my Time Lord heritage or something, I had a 4th root that they missed. And years later, it became infected. And I was like up to 8 on the Ali Brosh pain scale. It was horrific. So as soon as I saw Dr. Ta'ana's pain scale of happy face and neutral face, it's like, okay, we need some refinement on this. I also liked how Billups, after all the jury rigging that we see engineers do on Star Trek, finally it catches up with him, and all of the jury rig repairs he's done, like, initiate this cascade failure of just one problem after another, and they've got to fix them all.
Right. The pain scale thing is funny because there is no objective third-party way to assess pain. Pain is entirely subjective, internal response to stimuli, whatever internal or external stimuli. So they still can't they still don't have that objective measurement of pain, even in the 24th century, apparently. So I like this one. I know I'd been asking previously, I want to see more of some of these characters. I want to see Shax. I want to see, Dr. Tana. I want to see more of these. And so we got those, which is great. It was funny, the title, Upper Decks, I was like, it could be baseball, or it could be just showing these upper deckers. So it was good to see the upper deckers. I totally missed I don't know why I missed it, but I totally missed the connection to the Next Gen episode, which is kind of funny, because that's the whole premise of the series is that it's that Next Gen episode. Yeah. So,
and that's where, too, and I said early on in the episode, I felt like things were moving a little slowly. Really, I think that was intentional because it was trying to show some very mundane things that are happening to the bridge crew. And again,
like Captain Freeman's schedule just crammed with minutia.
Exactly. Yeah. The sousaphone performance and the fertility event and the drama recital or whatever it was she had to attend. Just kind of these sort of minutia, these sort of random things in some ways. It's been a while since I've seen the TNG episode Lower Decks, but it seems like, part of that was showing some of the random minutia, simple things that the lower deckers there were having to do.
Right. If I'd thought about it, if I'd made the connection, I would have been expecting to see someone get sacrificed in some way.
I was looking for that too. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that was the key. That was the emotional heart of that episode. Was right. Oh, they're lower deckers. They're not as important as our main crew, except when they have this sacrifice at the end. That's what really made that episode.
Jax, the Bajoran, was the one who made self-sacrifice. Yeah,
exactly.
On the other hand, this is a comedy show.
Yes,
so
that's true.
I understand why they didn't do that here.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought was interesting, they had an element with the character Officer Barnes, who is a Trill. And we've seen her a number of times, and I've always thought of her as kind of a lower decker, but I guess she's a little higher ranked. I don't really think of her as an upper decker, but I guess she kind of falls between two stools. She's not really one or the other.
Was Barnes the sousaphone?
Yes, one? That's what I'm about to say. So she has a sousaphone recital that Captain Freeman has to attend, kind of like Captain Picard attending Data's violin recitals and stuff. And the problem is, and they introduced this in the morning briefing for the bridge crew, that Officer Barnes's DNA is still recovering from something that happened to her. We don't know what, where it caused her DNA to both evolve and devolve at the same time. So she became a futuristic cave woman who could read people's minds but was afraid of an open flame. and someone asked Dr. Ta'ana, then how did you defeat her? And she says, thought about a candle. But she's still transitioning back to normal Trill after that. So she's got all this hair on her and stuff, that caveman like hair. She's not as bad as the picture they showed us of when it was in full flower, but she's still got that. She's still got some of the tendencies and still a little bit afraid of fire and stuff.
Captain Freeman remarks on it was a great performance. The protruding unibrow didn't affect it too much. And then even at another point, like when she's fighting with the Clickets in the corridor, she kind of stops and sees a reflection in the sousaphone and goes, "Is that flame?" Like she's still got the. So it was a nice way to pepper that into the episode. So our main lower deckers are spending the episode basically off screen, having a pumpkin carving party, and Tendi tells them, jack-o'-lanterns were supposed to ward off demons or keep demons out of your home.
Not really.
Okay, I was going to ask that what the origin of jack-o'-lantern is, but probably not really one of those myths.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say, but originally, so jack-o'-lanterns were made. So Jack, of course, is a generic Britishism that means man. And lantern is what you would think. It's a lantern. So it's a man who is also a lantern. And they were faces that were initially carved out of turnips because pumpkins are a New World crop.
Right.
And so they would make them out of turnips and stuff in Ireland and Scotland. And they would carry them around and, it not really so much to... I think the scaring off demons thing is a little bit exaggerated, but it's hard to interpret folk customs like that after a distance of a few hundred years. But certainly by the 20th century, when you're carving pumpkins, no one's using them to scare off demons.
Right. Well, maybe people just thought it was funny. Like, we tend to impute all of these superstitious motives to people in the past, but maybe people just did it because it was, look, it's a face, like, why not?
Exactly. Yeah. It's hard to it's important not to overinterpret stuff. Like when people are looking at, archaeological remains like Venus figurines from the Stone Age, and they say, this must be a ritual, a goddess ritual. And so, this is a goddess image used in fertility rituals. Yeah. Or maybe it's a child's toy, or maybe it's ancient porn, or who knows what it is.
Right.
And so I think it's important not to leap to initial theories about what things in the past may be without actual evidence.
Right.
On the other hand, people in the past did have sin eaters. So, you could have your sins baked into a soul cake and some poor person would eat it for you to get rid of your sins. So that was a thing.
That was a thing. In any case, in the pumpkin party, a mariner shows up. She's late to the party, covered in paint because she was in this sort of epic away mission. And she got stuck in a painting, and and she kind of tells the story of like how they had to get out of the painting. And Boimler's all like, I always wanted to get stuck in a painting. And it's just, it really, again, I know we say this all the time. It really highlights how weird the life of Starfleet officers is when you take it at its in the 900 episodes we've had of Star Trek, where all of these bizarre things happen because you have to write stories about bizarre things because it's interesting. But if it was taken as real, it's weird.
Yeah, I was wondering about that reference. Because I was trying to think, what would that be a reference to? Are they riffing on some other episode? And I didn't come up with anything.
Yeah,
I did come up with a reference though in the Dr. Ta'ana subplot, like one of her assistants in sickbay comes up and says, "I've refilled the hypo sprays. We should be good to go next time a virus makes everyone sing or something."
I caught that too.
It's like, okay, it wasn't a virus on Strange New Worlds, but we have had an all singing episode.
Exactly. Yeah.
I thought of that one. Yeah, that was good.
I thought the painting thing might be similar. I just couldn't think of anything.
I know of a story. I'm thinking I've seen something where people end up in paintings where the paintings come alive, but I don't remember what it was, and I don't know if it was a Star Trek thing. But I've heard stories like that.
They could well have thrown that in there too, just because it's like, okay, let's throw out some other ridiculous thing. We haven't put it on screen at this point, but it's ridiculous enough that, it could have happened or could happen at some point in a future Star Trek plot or whatever. So
it sounds like it could be a Star Trek thing, especially the TNG Star Trek thing. I think it just feels like that.
Did you catch the reference? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
The reference to the Cordry rocks in the ceiling panels on the bridge was a comment that I think Billups made. He was repairing, and I didn't catch that on my first watching, but then I went back and I saw some description on Memory Alpha about it, and it says it's probably a callback to yesterday's Enterprise when Captain Garrett gets killed by some rocks falling on her while she's on the bridge. And like, why were there rocks falling on her head in the bridge? Like, why would you need that? And then Billups says he's working on these, and he starts to explain what they're there for. And it's this very long technobabble explanation where he gets cut off partway through and whatnot.
I loved that because that goes all the way back to TOS even, where consoles would explode and rocks come flying out.
Yes, that's right too.
Why are there rocks in the consoles? It's always been a fan thing. And so I love the fact that this is what a fan would do, is come up with some sort of in-universe explanation for why you would need rocks inside consoles and bulkheads on a starship. And Billups gives us it, and I just thought that was great. It was really good.
It's not entirely implausible. I mean, if you told someone from, let's say, the 1600s that our modern devices work on silicon chips, and be like, you've got rocks in your devices, it's like, well, okay, it does come from rocks, but it's been reprocessed in some way. Maybe in the future they don't have to reprocess it; they just use the rock.
Yeah.
Memory Alpha doesn't tell us why they're called Cordry rocks, which is right. Yeah, it's got to be an in joke about somebody on the crew or something.
Yeah.
I liked, we spend so much time with all of these, as you mentioned, weird situations on this show. And the characters themselves, you look at our regular characters and they're a bunch of weirdos. And, all of them, I mean, Shax and Ransom and Captain Freeman and all of the lower, they're all weird. And this is a very metatextual show. It starts with Boimler and Mariner talking about how we're sort of the stars of the show around here, and the commanders just fade into the background, and then immediately we transition into a story all about the commanders. And then later on we have this Clickett invasion, and we know that they have this allergic reaction to praise. I mean, emotionally allergic reaction to praise. And so Captain Freeman's solution, she gets the commander of the Clickett on FaceTime and is talking to him, and she just starts complimenting him, over and over about how just one thing after another. She finds all this good stuff she can say about him, and it's like, I approve, and gives him a big thumbs up. And he flees, and his crew flees, and as soon as they all flee, she says, "What a bunch of weirdos." And it's like, okay, this is another metatextual comment. This is also our regular crew are weirdos too.
By the way, I follow up on the Cordry rocks. I felt like it might have been a reference to, like, an internal reference to Rob Corddry, who's an actor and comedian who actually happens to be from the next town over from where I am right now. But he's never been in Star Trek, but I'm wondering if it's a connection to Rob Corddry, because that's the only famous Corddry I know. So I just thought that was funny.
I wouldn't know. I mean, I keep mentally connecting it to cordyceps, which is a fungus.
Right. From Last of Us. Yes. I don't know if you've seen that show. It's Real World, but it was the fungus that was the source of the zombie infection in Last of Us due to a mutation. Yes.
I mean, Jeffries tubes were basically named after someone named Jeffries, right? And
He was the
Jeffries.
prop master.
Prop master, there you go, in the original series. So yeah, is there someone with the last name of Cordra who's doing something with Lower Decks or with one of the other series that, you know?
Could be.
Yeah.
That'd be my guess.
Yeah. So Shax is having these hallucinations of fighting the Cardassians, but it's sort of like post-traumatic stress related to himself, like seeing his younger, more violent self. And it's an interesting, serious element in a very comedic show. And they ended up playing it for a comic effect, but it's that Lower Decks ability to kind of ride the line between a very serious thing and a funny thing, and still, do it justice in a sense. He references the Battle of Timpasa, which Memory Alpha says is likely a reference to Kira Nerese's Shakar resistance cell, which Shax was supposed to be part of, a raid on a Cardassian base in Timpasa, which was mentioned in a DS9 episode. So I thought that was an interesting reference to DS9.
I like how while he's fighting his demons, the Clicket invasion is going on, and he kicks butt on all the Clicket, thinking that they're his inner demons.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so he's like hallucinating that they're Cardassians, and he's just trashing them and doesn't realize it till he snaps out of his vision.
And apologizes.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know it's an invasion. And Ransom is interesting, because Ransom is sent to take this Starfleet ecologist, because there's something wrong with the bagoons,
space cows.
The space cows.
They call them. They look kind of like roly polies or pill bugs combined with cows.
Yeah,
and they're called space cows, and they eat stuff in an asteroid belt. But even though the scientist keeps wanting to call them bagoon, which is their real name, others just call them space cows
because it's so much easier. And so his adventure in this episode, shall we say, is down on the shuttle bay with these
Ransoms.
other lower deckers, trying to get them aboard, and they're kind of messing up. And there's this whole thing where they kind of unite around the fact that Ransom is an idiot. And we're going to show him that we're actually better than that. He takes us for fools, but we'll unite to show him. And it all turns out to be, though, this is actually Ransom's command's leadership style, which is unite them in hate against me and the idiot, which is a unique style. I'm not sure I would recommend it for everyone, but one of the lower deckers does kind of call him on it. She kind of recognizes it.
Yeah, he pretends to follow. He gives lengthy speeches and then that have no relevance to their current situation, and then falls asleep and lets them deal with the situation. And so they band together. So even though they're from opposing hostile shifts, they band together in opposition to him and what an idiot he is. And they managed to get the space cows under control, because after they brought them on board the ship, the space cows started to stampede in effect. And then it turns out they can turn invisible too. So how do you stop an invisible stampede? And they finally find a way to do it. And then they're heading off to the bar to go celebrate. And one of them catches Ransom waking up and realizes he's pretending. Yeah. He's been pretending this whole time. And he says, "Please don't tell the others." And she's like, "Oh, everyone hates you. They wouldn't believe me even if I did."
Yeah, I like that Ransom's not completely an idiot, like like he pretends to be. And then we mentioned the Billups in engineering and the overloads. There was like an AI holo golem that he put into the system to. It was going by so fast.
The Binars put the holo golem into the system.
Oh, okay, yeah, it went by so fast. I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but he says at one point, the junior engineer who's with him trying to solve things is like, we're going to die, and he says, everybody dies, but it's the engineers who really get to live. It was so dramatic. It was so funny.
By the way, we should mention this Gollum is not the kind, it's not Gollum for
Not
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It's Golem, meaning it's from Jewish Kabbalistic mythology, but it's an artificial man.
Yeah.
And that's frequently understood as a defender of people. And so the Bynars built this artificial intelligence monster man thing into the computer system and engineering.
Right. And then it's the captain's day that's full of appointments, as you mentioned, Jimmy. The fertility event was brief but remarkable because it was this alien, and she's like, I didn't realize you weren't human. And he says, what was it? My reproductive jelly is at the right stage. And then I'm so glad you could come attend the fertility event. And then sort of a little bit in the background, but a little bit in the foreground, you see he just kind of explodes outward in tentacles and goes like sort of almost like a alien chest buster. And it was like, oh my, just imagining when you have so many species living in close quarters, how such things could be part of your daily life. I thought that was kind of funny, thinking about that.
And this being an animated show, that's also undoubtedly a reference to Japanese hentai.
Oh, tentacles. Yeah.
Nobody needs to look that up. It's just something that fans of animation may have heard of. I haven't actually seen it.
Yeah. Don't Google it.
Yeah.
You know, the comment too of "I didn't realize you weren't human" is maybe even another little reference to the fact that a lot of these alien species look pretty human, and you know, some of them you don't even know they're not human until somewhere in the story they tell you that. Especially in the earlier series when they didn't have as much elaborate makeup and everything.
Or even today over on Strange New Worlds, number one is not human, and neither is the current engineer of the Enterprise, but they both look like human women.
Right. Yeah.
They don't even have forehead bumps, which is what TNG did to tell people who aren't human. So at the end, we actually get, I don't know, it's kind of a nice moment for Freeman where she gets this romantic anniversary date with her husband, Admiral Freeman, who is usually far away. The idea of, a captain and an admiral being married and being so far apart all the time in a marriage, it seems kind of odd, to think about, but people in our armed services do that, I guess. And
I don't know that they allow people to be married within the same chain of command, though.
No. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't allow that. But but they go to Paris for their romantic dinner date on the holodeck. So that's another reference to TNG, where Picard went to Paris for a romantic dinner. At the end, there is this funny, I can't remember exactly what it was, but they're in the bar on board the Cerritos, and T'Lyn makes a joke at Mariner's expense, and she kind of gives that deadpan boom, like. I mean, if you watched it, you know what I mean. But it's just, it's a funny delivery because it's so deadpan, but it's such a thing you would say to your friend, like, boom, gotcha. But she does it like, boom, I'm emulating human comedic responses. So I like that too.
She also has an insight into the nature of the episode in that she proposes perhaps our commanders are the leads of their own stories when we're not observing them, which Boimler, I think, immediately dismisses.
This might be the most meta Star Trek episode ever.
Yeah.
The idea, I mean, in some ways, and we've mentioned this book many times, is Red Shirts by John Scalvi, which is a extremely meta, extremely fourth wall breaking sort of story. And I feel like this episode of Lower Decks really does that. And, it's sort of appropriate. It comes at the end of the series, that idea that, kind of looking at ourselves and where we are and who we are in the continuity of all Star Trek and in our place in the Star Trek universe. So I do kind of like that. I did see some folks who were they like the episode and they like to focus on the upper deckers, but given the few episodes remaining, they regret, that's not that they think it was a bad idea, but they do regret not getting more time with the characters that we've come to associate with the show most closely. And I think that's an interesting
I can
complaint.
sympathize with that. I don't want this series to end.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's too good of a series. So of course I want more time with the upper deckers as well as the lower deckers.
One thing about, this, again, paralleling to the Next Gen episode, Lower Decks, that came in the final season of Next Generation. This episode comes in the final season of Lower Decks. And for a little while, this is what the antepenultimate episode, right? The third to last for Lower Decks. For a little bit, I had in my mind that maybe the Lower Decks episode in Next Generation was also like the third to last, the antepenultimate. But I went and looked it up, and that wasn't the case. It was in the final season, but it was maybe 10
Mid-season?
episodes. Yeah, about mid-season, I want to say.
Yeah. And they don't, you mentioned in terms of the maidenness of this, they don't actually break the fourth wall here, but they do what's known as pound on the fourth wall.
Yeah.
Which is where you clearly signal in the audience, but without a direct communication to the audience.
Right.
So no one looks at the screen and says, see what we did here?
It's not a Deadpool type of show.
Yeah.
Any other notes on this episode, Father?
Yeah, the description on Paramount Plus for this episode was simply, the Lower Deckers have a pumpkin carving party. As though that's the whole plot or something, right? So if you're just scrolling through episode listings and see this description, like, well, what's going on with this? Why would I want to watch that episode?
Yeah,
that is a really meta episode description. That is clever. That's good.
Yes.
I like that.
How about you, Jimmy? Anything else?
Nope.
All right. I did mention we have some feedback, and this was on our last episode, the Lower Decks episode, Fully Dilated, on YouTube. Truly Awesome New Mexico Catholic writes, okay, everyone, let's start a petition to get Jimmy on the Lower Decks writing team, or if not that, Strange New Worlds. Well, it seems like it's too late for Lower Decks, so let's get you on Strange New Worlds, Jimmy.
They could bring me back for Lower Decks, the Next Generation.
Lower Decks Legacy, right? Mm-hmm. All right. So thank you. Truly awesome. We do appreciate your feedback. And now we want to
appreciate the support.
Yes. We do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Ashley P., Susan B., Amy G., Adam S., and Mike M. Their generous tax-deductible donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. This StarQuest show is also brought to you by Exodus 90 and the Exodus 90 app. Men, we are called to share the hope and joy of Jesus Christ. Our family, friends, and community desperately need us to imitate our Lord to be radically present and available. What if you intentionally live this Advent season differently, focused not on buying Christmas presents, but sharing the loving presence of Jesus Christ? We want to invite you to join us on the Exodus 90 app and break out of the religion of the world. Join the men of Exodus 90 and Monsignor James Shea, president of the University of Mary, who's our spiritual guide for Advent this year on the Exodus 90 app. Together, we will rediscover the hope that God lays out for us in the coming of His Son into the world. Go to exodus90.com/SQPN to learn more about Advent on the Exodus 90 app. That's exodus90.com/SQPN to join men from around the world this Advent starting December 1st. Be radically free in Jesus Christ this Advent. So that's it from us. We'd love to know what you thought of Upper Decks. Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send an email to trek@sqpn.com. Visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord, or watch The Secrets of Star Trek on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia, where you should like, hit the bell, and leave a comment. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Lower Decks episode, Fisher Quest. Until then, Father Jason Tyler, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, strong and brave, wise and true, that's what makes us the Cerritos crew. Yeah!